So guys, thanks for taking the time to chat tonight. Very exciting night coming up. You're doing a collaboration with Queensland Symphony Orchestra. Can you tell me how this came about? Because that's a really amazing fusion of genres there.
Yeah, so we were approached by QSO and they expressed an interest in collaborating and helping us expand on our last record that we released, which is called I Love Songs. And yeah, that's kind of the premise behind the idea of the night, is to play the entire album from front to back. So for us, it's really exciting because there's a bunch of songs that we've never played before in our shows. So I think for fans as well, to hear those songs live for the first time is going to be cool. And just to kind of collaborate with that world, like coming from a hip hop background, is kind of pretty flattering. I feel like, to have people from that kind of classical trained world recognize the music that we make and take an appreciation and an interest in it is really kind of flattering. And so we're just excited to be able to team up with such fantastic kind of quality musicians and help elevate our music to another level.
And so I Love Songs, that was a really big step away from obviously like your signature Aussie hip hop style. You kept that signature element throughout the album, but what inspired that change? Like you guys have been riding together for 10 years now, and it was something so fresh and different. I'd love to know what the creative process was behind it.
I don't know, we probably all could maybe touch on it a little bit, but I think for me it was like pretty similar to how we'd always done it, the approach. I don't think it was like necessarily we were like, let's be heaps different and try and do something different. I actually thought we're doing pretty much the same thing, but I suppose we've all learned more along the way and we've progressed as people and musicians and everything, so maybe that the timing of all that kind of helped it take maybe a bigger leap into a different direction. But I don't think it was, from my point of view, like necessarily something we tried to do. We're always trying to make the best music we can. We'll just maybe on a bit of a different wave this time, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it was like intentional, and it was a lot to do with like relationships with the band progressing and relationships to I guess like once we were about halfway through, we realized that we weren't writing like rap music, and we were writing songs, and a lot of them were love songs, and we obviously love music, so there was a marriage between like the craft of songwriting over the craft of writing bars, and obviously the through theme, which was like a kind of like a love story. So it was just a marriage between both writing songs, that a departure of writing exclusively hip hop albums to crafting songs, and the narrative of what a relationship and love is, I guess. So yeah, thank you. We appreciate that you noticed.
Sounds like it was a very organic process rather than setting out and going, okay, we're going to do something different, which is really awesome. Does that mean that maybe there's another album on the way soon if you're just going to ride that creative wave at the moment?
Yeah, I suppose we're all always working on music. We don't really have like a landscaping job that we'll be going to on Tuesday to help someone out with their backyard or anything. So I'd say we'll definitely be working on new material when it comes out. I think we're still writing this album with this show, and we had a pretty busy couple years, or 10 years before that, so potentially a break, potentially not. I don't think we've really even had time to really talk about it too much yet.
And so with your collaboration with QSO tonight, what do you want people to take away? Because just circling back, bringing in that symphony orchestra with your new style, are you just trying to promote different genres in general and just show people just how versatile you really are? Or what would you like people to take away?
I mean, I think I've never even seen an orchestra live, and I'm guessing 99.9% of our listenership hasn't either. So it's just really awesome that QSA have approached us so we can gift this experience to people. And it's really emotional. Like, the songs we've written are quite emotional, and like seeing everything come together live is it kind of hits you, and to be able to gift that to people and hopefully for them to walk away with an experience that they can associate us with, you know, a bit more depth perhaps than a regular hip-hop show, and is just incredible that we have this opportunity to kind of hopefully broaden some people's musical like palette, I guess.
Yeah, I would also, yeah, I agree with what Tuck said in the sense that just to hear, when you hear, like, we've been doing rehearsals yesterday, and when you hear those like outros and you hear those strings, kind of like extended string sections playing, like it does add like an emotional kind of like aspect to the music that is there in the music, but it kind of is accentuated by like this kind of classic like sounding instruments live. So yeah, hopefully people can have like an experience that we kind of like are able to pull at the heartstrings a little bit, excuse the pun, but yeah, so I think it's going to be a really special night for the fans, but also for us, you know. Like, a couple of moments yesterday were just kind of like looking back at these, you know, 20 odd people that are all playing our music that, you know, we wrote together in our little bedroom studio, and it's just, yeah, look at me now, Mom, I'm a real musician. Yeah, exactly that kind of vibe. So yeah, I think it's going to be emotional and special.
And so is there a particular song that you feel really resonates well with tonight that you're excited to play? Like, for me, All I See Is Music is absolute banger. I love that, and I'd love to see how they're going to work in with the bass and everything. What are you looking forward to most in terms of specific songs?
I'm really looking forward to a song called World's Gone Mad, because that's probably my favourite song from the I Love Songs album, and probably the most emotionally kind of like impactful for me anyway. You know, kind of touch on some pretty personal things in that song. So yeah, to hear that one in particular, kind of with, you know, the extended intros and outros and all of the warmth and depth that the live instruments can add, is going to be, yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, Jessie kind of stole my answer. So I feel like I should just make up one, but I probably shouldn't. I think originally we're talking we might have to cut some songs, and then someone had said cut that one, and then I went back and listened, and I felt like that song and the orchestra kind of like really married really well and flowed super nice, and kind of like, yeah, I don't know, elevated it, and yeah, made me pulled at my heartstrings or whatever.
My fart strings. Why do your farts have strings, Morgan?
Everyone's different.
Actually, there's a song called Shoot the Breeze, and there's a song called Dopamine, and normally they're like album cuts, and so they never see the light of day. And Overdose, what am I talking about? Overdose. In particular is something I doubt we'd ever play, and to have an opportunity to play it live is one thing, because I know, like, you go out with these big singles, and more often than not, when you've got a fan base that listen to whole records, you know, they don't really like the big popular ones, they like the deep cuts, and Overdose is like definitely a fan favorite, and I think it's pretty relatable, and a lot of people have reached out to us about that song, and so listening to it with all the woodwind instruments and like the real low horns, like, give it this like undertow or something, this like, it makes it a lot more heavy sonically. And I went out the front when we were rehearsing yesterday, and I was like, whoa, this motherfucker is huge, so much bigger than what we do digitally, you know. So yeah, Overdosed. I don't know why I called it Dopamine, but anyway. Yeah, it was the working title. Anyway.
Something else I've always wanted to ask as well is you're constantly challenging yourself musically, you know, as you would as a creative person, but You also, in your lyrics, I think you try and challenge the norm a bit. So, for instance, I know a lot of other artists, when it comes to like talking about a woman, for instance, like first thing they'll say is how they look. Whereas in a lot of your songs, it's like Sally Can't Dance, for instance. You say you're an intelligent lady with a lot to say, and I think that's such an important thing that you do in your music. You really, I think you're so respectful of people in the way that you talk. Is that something that you intentionally make a point of, or is that just you're inherently respectful?
Yeah, Jesse's not respectful to women, so let's not let him say anything. God damn, Jesse. Well, I think we're all raised by... Yeah, oh well, to a degree. But yeah, I was raised by my mom, my sister, so I don't know, and they're both kind of like strong, independent women, so I definitely probably would feel pretty weird if like these guys were writing songs, like real sexist songs. I'd kind of feel like, oh, I don't want mom to hear this or whatever, whereas like, I hope that I know that she is proud of, what these guys say, and Jesse actually lived with me for a little while till his sexist ways got him kicked out or whatever, but wait, I took the mic off you, bro. You'll get your turn. Yeah, so I think, I don't know, like hopefully everyone is like that, but obviously there's a lot of men that aren't like that aren't respectful, so I think it must have been my upbringing, hopefully. Thanks, Mom.
Thanks, Mom. Yeah, there are things that get talked about, like, for instance, I think even on, I can't remember what song it is, but Jesse says bish or bish instead of bitch, and he's not directing it at women at all, but I remember us even having a discussion about that as well, and whether that's an appropriate thing, because, like, the other day we were hit up by a 14-year-old who's been listening to us for 10 years, and so it really rains home that if we were, just because Eminem does it doesn't mean that that's a formula for success. And, if we had been influencing this kid for 10 years, he's about to hit puberty, and heaven forbid we've inspired him to be a songwriter. It's not immediate what language does and how it affects and sculpts your perspective, but like, we've had to untangle a lot of Eminem's lyrics and fight our own urges to diss half the population, because it's culturally like been the norm for so long that it's actually something that we have to be conscious of, and we have to talk about to hold ourselves up from doing it, which is interesting. And hopefully, it can be more of a norm that people are naturally respectful of literally half the population. And so the next generation of kids coming up don't have to have a similar struggle that we've had to, which is like consciously pulling ourselves up. Like, there's so many things that we know are taboo, but because within hip hop acts like Eminem or whatever, and I'm not saying that I dislike Eminem's music at all, like, I'm just saying that doesn't have to be the norm, So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
That's pretty incredible to know that you've had someone listening to your music since they were 4 years old. Is that how do you take that on board? That's insane.
Yeah, once you get over the initial thought of, God damn, we're old, you really just start to appreciate, I think, that there are people listening, like, it's a funny thing, you kind of make these songs in a contained in your own little world, in your own, it's coming from within inside of us, like your own mind and your own headspace, and like, it's still a weird thing for me to contemplate that there's going to be anyone listening to what you write at the end of the process of having written it. And I know that's kind of a bit naive, perhaps, because obviously, I've been doing it for a long time, and there are, that there are people listening, but it's not like a natural, it's not like a natural thought to think that, like, you might release a song and it might get millions of listens, and it's like, you know, it just is kind of surreal still to this day for me. So to think that there are people listening, and that there are people that have been listening for that long is just crazy, and humbling and flattering. And, you know, like Tuck mentioned it before, but you do have to like admit to yourself and recognize that you do have a platform, and that there are kids listening. And, you know, like, we don't let that censor too much, like, the type of things that we want to talk about. Like, you know, I have nieces and nephews, and now a young baby daughter myself, but when I'm writing a song, I don't try and let that get in the way of what I would naturally want to say, you know, and sometimes admit to dark things that you might not necessarily want them to hear. But at the same time, it's like, you do have a responsibility, if you are a public figure to an extent, to own what you say and what content you put out into the world. And also touching on what these guys said about you know, misogyny and the language that you use and things like that. You know, like, we're partly as well, like, fighting against a stigma that our genre suffers from, and quite justifiably so, historically, you know, because there is a lot of misogyny traditionally in hip hop, and, you know, glorification of, you know, wealth and all the kind of more shallow side of life, you know. So us trying not to engage in that side of things is also like a reaction against that, and trying to change people's perceptions to an extent that not all hip hop has to be that, and that, you know, you can't clump everyone in a genre into the same kind of basket, you know. So I think, you know, we always try to kind of challenge people's perceptions of what hip-hop music can be and what it can stand for. And, you know, there is an aspect of it traditionally as well, which has been like trying to challenge stereotypes and, you know, spread knowledge and consciousness and things like that. And I think that's more the side of hip-hop that we always kind of veered towards. I don't know, I forgot what the question was, because I've been rambling for too long. But yeah, 14-year-olds, 4-year-olds, thanks for listening.
Last question. What's been your highlight? Like, you've been together for 10 years. What's the ultimate part of your musical career?
Honestly, just, I can't like put it down to, I think, like one moment in particular, but just the fact that we're still able to make music together as friends, as family for this long, and make a living from it, and to still be able to do that at this point in our lives is, from hip-hop music, is just, you know, unimaginable. Like, from when we started to, if you fast forward 10 years and said you'll be earning a living from this and all that kind of stuff, I would have just laughed. From where we started and where the hip-hop scene and the music industry was, and when we started, it was just seemed like unfathomable. So for me, it's just, the highlight is that I still get to do it, and it's still fun, and I still wake up every day and pinch myself that I'm able to do this every day.
Yeah, same things Jessie said. And the time when Jessie was heaps sick, and for like 5 days, here we go, at Falls, and is like we had to have 2 buckets, like one for spew and one for the other one, just in case mid-set, and all he'd eaten in like 3 days was cracker, and he threw it up straight away. And I felt so bad for him, but it's a real highlight for some reason. I just never forget it.
But I never needed the buckets, let me just point that out. I held it all in.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine, don't worry. He used them. Probably for me, the time I fell over hometown gig, we're going back up for the encore. I'm like, yeah, hometown, a little bit too many shandies or whatever. white wine spritzers, and I ran up the stairs all excited and in front of my hometown crowd, hit the deck. That was very bit of a highlight. And Tuck's fallen over a few times. That's awesome. And the ripped pants and his grandpa, his grandpa boxes are down past his knees. Like a little hole in of his 14 years. Yeah, those are my 3 highlights. Thanks for listening.
My highlight's actually been Morgan trolling almost every single interview that he's ever been in. And sometimes it's made the interview way more entertaining and worth watching than the stiff approach that I always have, which is answering the questions heap seriously. But to elaborate on what Jessie was saying, I guess in my head, it's awesome in almost hindsight, we can now live off it, which that was always the goal to do. But now I guess the new realization that I kind of have had with it is that there's a platform now that when we do release something, people do listen to it, and so we don't have to play into writing a radio single, or we don't have to play into doing a particular hip-hop song. We've kind of established enough of a fan base that we can be unashamedly and unapologetically ourselves, which I think a lot of artists kind of struggle with. What am I meant to sound like? How do I become popular or anything like that? To be honest, I'm not too concerned if we become any more popular than we already are. But I do, one of the highlights now is having that confidence in our ability and the platform to now grow. Because, like Jessie said, when we started 10 years ago, I doubt the band's a little even before 10 years ago, Hilltop Hoods hadn't even cracked yet. There was no Yellow Brick Road to follow, and just to get here in the first place is amazing. And now to appreciate our platform and not take that shit for granted and just grow from it is seriously a massive highlight.
Good answer, Tuck. Morgs. I hate you.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time to chat with Marx Music today. Really appreciate it.